you could turn to the Rebbe in your thoughts. You could look at a picture of the Rebbe. The Rebbe says that when you look at a picture of a holy Jew, he's connecting to you through the picture. It's like a medium that you can connect.
Okay.
So you sense his energy through the picture and he senses yours, so to speak. And you could turn to him. You could ask him to help you.
Sure. Talk to
like
him.
look and say, like, Rebbe, please help me with this situation. Please intercede for God on my behalf. You continue obviously to pray to God. You continue to say your psalms to God as prayers to God. But the job of the Rebbe is to be what Kabbalah calls the intermediary who connects. There could be an intermediary that separates between the two, like he's there in the middle, so there's you, there's God, and he's the barrier in between. And there's the intermediary who connects, that he's facilitating the relationship. He's transparent. He's not taking up space. He's facilitating the relationship between the human being and God so they become one. So yesterday was the 10th day of the Jewish month of Shvat. Yesterday was the 10th of Shvat. Today, therefore, is the 11th of Shvat. The 10th of Shvat in 1950 was the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. And, of course, at the moment of his passing, that was the moment, the beginning of the leadership of the current Rebbe. But truly, officially, the Lubavitcher Rebbe took on the leadership a year later, meaning his father-in-law passed away the 10th of Shvat, 1950. The 10th of Shvat, 1951 is when the Rebbe officially assumed the leadership, though the leadership began the second of his father-in-law's passing. So therefore, the first complete 24 hours of his leadership was the 11th of Shvat, 1951, which in the Hebrew is 11, 11, 11, the 11th day of the 11th month of the year of 11. In the English, it's 1951, but in the Hebrew, it's a year that ends with the number 11. It's 5711. So it was like the 11th day of the 11th year of the 11th month is the first complete 24-hour period of the official leadership of the Rebbe. So that's right now, because today was the 11th of Shvat. So this is such like Rebbe time, it's the energy, and therefore I thought, well, we've got to focus on this today. This is such a special time to connect to the Rebbe. We can't just let it pass us by. This is my class, whatever my class would be, I'm sure I would focus on it, and you guys are my class. So we're focusing on this tonight. In the Hasidic lexicon, connection, binding, fusion, the union of self with the Rebbe is a tremendous vehicle to help our union of self with God. And every generation, God has one Jew, one soul, the highest soul of the generation. And that soul is his mouthpiece, his vehicle of current, at this moment, communication with the world. And his job is to connect the world, all of the inhabitants of the world, to God. Now, the Rebbe, whose job this is, concerns himself with mankind. The Rebbe revolutionized the way the Jewish world looks at the Noachide, looks at non-Jews, as each one is potential Noachide, that we have the privilege and the obligation to connect to God. Of course, we were discussing this recently, so one or two stories that I think really illustrate how the Rebbe is looking at every human being, and for each one trying to help them fulfill their mission and connect to God as they're supposed to. So Shirley Chisholm was elected in 1968 to represent New York's 12th district, which included the neighborhood of Crown Heights, Brooklyn, where the Rebbe's headquarters are. Now, when she was elected in 1968, she made headlines as the first African-American woman elected to Congress. And this was a very, sensationalized race and election. But she found that very quickly, when she actually went to Washington, her congressional career was very stunted by race-related policies. Because of the political pressures from Southern politicians, the House's leadership assigned Chisholm to the Agricultural Committee, a place she knew nothing about. She's a city girl. She's coming from Brooklyn. She's wanting to make an impact and help the poor and help the underprivileged and help the blacks, and she's in the Agricultural Committee, and they basically put her there to just sort of put her away in a place where she could have no influence and no power and do nothing. And it was funny because the New York media, they wrote an article about this, and they wrote, I mean, so to speak, the title of a famous book, "A Tree Grows in Brooklyn," with a question mark, like, do trees really grow in Brooklyn? Like, what Shirley Chisholm, a Brooklyn girl, doing in the Agricultural Committee? And this created for Chisholm a lot of frustration. She was there, revved, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to help liberate the underprivileged, the poor, the blacks, the women, the urban rights, and she's in the Agricultural Committee. She got a phone call from the Rebbe secretariat that the Lubavitcher Rebbe wants to see. And Chisholm, who actually lived a block away from the Rebbe, and she came and she said, "I'm upset. I'm insulted. What should I do?" And the Rebbe said, "What a blessing God has given you. You look at the divine providence. You can do something now for the American people about food. You're in the Agricultural Committee. You can do something about food supply." And the Rebbe said to her, "This country has so much surplus food, and there's so many hungry people in this country. So God gave you a gift to feed hungry people. Well, God will. You're going to find a creative way. You've got all this extra food. You've got all these hungry people. Find a way." So Chisholm went back to Washington, and instead of being depressed, she was like, inspired by the words of the Rebbe that no, it's not Southern politicians that are trying to keep her quiet. This is God ultimately running the show. And this appointment is from God. And there's a reason. And it's a good reason. And she's going to help people. So she happened to meet U.S. Senator Bob Dole, who was a young senator at that time. So he, coming from Kansas, he had problems with his state. He said, "I have all these farmers in my state, and they're losing money. They have all these crops that are going nowhere." And he told her that the Americans aren't buying American-grown food. They're buying food from Cuba. So the farmers are poor. The farmers are growing these crops, and no one's buying it. We have all this extra food. We don't know what to do with it. And then Chisholm thought, that's what the rabbi said. There's this extra food in the country, and there's poor, hungry people in the country. What could she do about it? So what did she do? So during the next few years, the end of the 60s, and for the entire 70s, Chisholm worked to expand the National Food Stamp Program, which allowed poor Americans to buy subsidized foods. And finally, in 1973, they mandated this, that food stamps has to be available everywhere in America. And then Chisholm created the WIC program to help women, high-risk pregnant women, help their infants. And she did more and more and more and more. And there's so many people that she helped through specifically being in the Agricultural Committee, specifically using that as an opportunity. I think today more than 8 million people receive WIC benefits each month. So when she finally retired in the 80s, she said at her retirement party, everything I accomplished, she had accomplished a lot in her career. She said, everything I accomplished, I owe this because a rabbi who is an optimist taught me that what you think might be a challenge is a gift from God. If poor babies have milk and poor children have food, it's because this rabbi in Crown Heights had vision. So I thought that was just a beautiful expression, how the Rebbe has vision. Of course, we know the Rebbe has vision, not only for Jews. The Rebbe has vision for the world, not only for the big people like here, she's a politician, she truly made a tremendous impact, but each individual. I just heard this story literally Thursday night of an Indian man, non-Jewish, very, very, very wealthy. And he came into a bank and he was speaking to someone in the bank, creating a loan for himself for some business project. And he sees behind this bank officer's desk, there's a picture of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Now, obviously, this is in India. This man is not Jewish. And the person he's talking to from the bank representative is not Jewish either. And he said to him, like, why do you have a picture of the Lubavitcher rabbi on your wall? He said, the previous person that had this office, he put it up. Yeah, he left it here for me. Whatever, like, so to speak, like, who cares? It was just, like, irrelevant to him. And this very wealthy man said, no, you should know. He's the Messiah. He says, what are you talking about? He said, let me tell you what happened with me and him. He said, I have a lot of business dealings with various people, Americans, Jews, and I kept hearing about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and I finally decided I wanted to meet him. So through my contacts, I came to New York, came on a Sunday when the Lubavitcher Rebbe was, as was his custom in those years, distributing dollars to anyone. I stood in line. I go with the Rebbe. I don't say my name. I don't say where I'm from. I don't say anything. He gives me $1 and a blessing, like he's giving everyone on that line, like sort of wrote $1 and a blessing. And I keep moving. And then he calls me back and he gives me another $1. And he says to me, when you give charity, know who you're giving to and what the money is being used for. That was it. I kept walking. I was like, what? Here I am traveling from India to New York to meet this renowned spiritual figure. And it was like nothing. And he's telling me he doesn't even know who I am. He didn't ask me my name. He knows nothing about me. When you give charity, know who you're giving it to and what they're using it for. Whatever. I was like disappointed. Anyway, went back home. And a while later, an organization, I don't know if they were the Red Cross or something like the Red Cross that works in India, came to him to ask for a huge sum, which they said was like very, very urgent and they must have this money. And he's very generous, supporting this organization. And he's writing out a check. You're saying it's really urgent and they must have this money. Sure, of course. He's very philanthropic. And then suddenly it dinged in his head what the Rebbe had said to him. When you give charity, know who you're giving to and what they're going to use it for. And he said to them, well, what are you using this money for? Like, what's this big urgent thing that you need so much money from me? And they said, well, there's a certain area in India now that people are just dropping every day. They're starving. They're dropping and dying from hunger. There's bodies all over. And we need to quickly buy all these trucks, hire drivers, go to the city, and we just have to get out these bodies. There's all these dead bodies every day. People are dropping from hunger. He said, wait a minute. You want to take all this money and buy trucks to take out the dead bodies. How much would it cost to feed the people? Like, how much would it cost per day to feed a person in that city? He said $2 a day. So instead of taking my money and buying trucks, why don't you take my money and buy food so no people shouldn't die anymore? They're like, oh, they didn't think of it that way. Well, it's more complicated to feed the living than to take away the dead. This, that. They started making excuses. He's like, I will give you this money to feed the hungry, not to take away the dead bodies. In the end, he worked it out with them. There's a lot of details to the story. And they used his money to feed the people in this city in India until, for whatever reason, whatever famine was going on there passed. The people of the city's lives were saved because of this money. And he said, here you have a person sitting in Brooklyn who sees, who cares for the people, for the residents of a city of non-Jews in India. I just walked by. I didn't say my name. I didn't say where I'm from. I didn't say who I support. And this rabbi knew it all. He looked at me. He knew who I was. He knew who I'd give money to. He knew what was going to happen. And he knew that I should get a heads up to give food to the people instead of trucks to take away the dead bodies. He says such a person has to be the Messiah. So it's just like, I literally just heard this story for the first time Thursday night. And I was like right away thinking of this class. I was like, just to know, just to see. Of course, there are many, many, many stories and incidents, vignettes that happen with the Rebbe and non-Jews, but it's just each one is just affirming. I've helped several Noachides write to the Rebbe for blessings, for advice. There's actually an interesting story I just heard. I also heard this story. I heard this story last week. This is with a rabbi in Vancouver. A rabbi I happen to know a little in Vancouver. And he said that at one point he had a relationship with two Jewish men. He would come, he would learn with them, he would study with them, and he became very close to them. And through them, he even developed a relationship with their lawyer, the lawyer of these two Jewish businessmen, who was a non-Jew. And he developed a relationship with this non-Jew as well. And one time this non-Jew said to him, Rabbi, can a non-Jew ask the Lubavitcher Rebbe for a blessing? He said, sure, of course. He said, well, my wife is very ill. Rabbi Weinberg said, great, give me her name and her father's name. For Jews, generally, for something like a blessing, we would say the Jewish name and the mother's name. And for non-Jews, it's the name and the father's name. It always go through the father for a non-Jew. Okay, so the lawyer gave the rabbi his wife's name and her father's name, and he passes it on to the Rebbe's office saying, this is for a non-Jewish woman who's very ill, if the Rebbe could please pray for her. And he gets back a call from the Rebbe's office, and the secretary on the line said, the Lubavitcher Rebbe asked, what is the woman's mother's name? So Rabbi Weinberg is assuming, well, they goofed in the message, And he said, no, 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 I guess it wasn't clear. This is a non-Jewish woman. That's why I gave the father's name. This is a non-Jewish woman. And the secretary is like, the Rebbe knows that. And the Rebbe wants the mother's name. She's like, oops, okay, fine, sorry, my fault. No problem. So he quickly gets off the phone and he calls the lawyer, his friend, this non-Jew, this lawyer. And he said, I just got a request from the Lubavitch Rebbe's office. They need your wife's mother's name. And the lawyer's confused because he already heard and understood the concept that Jews according to the mother, non-Jews according to the father. And he said, but like my wife, we're not Jewish. He said, this is what the Rebbe said. He wants your wife's mother's name. So he tells his wife, she's like, okay, I know my mother's name, but maybe, I don't know, let me call her, let me find out. Maybe, I don't know why we even need her name, but maybe there's a name we don't know, maybe there's something significant going on here. So she speaks to her mother, her parents, they're living in Vancouver, but her parents, she's originally from France. So she speaks to her mother in France, who knew she was very ill, and they were speaking frequently. And she said to her mother, it's sort of strange, even though we're Catholics, but my husband had asked Lubavitch Rebbe for a blessing for me because of my illness, and we gave the Rebbe my name and my father's name, and the Rebbe said he needs my mother's name. So I don't know why I need your name, but the Rebbe says I need your name. I know your name's Anna, but you have another name. Anything I should say to the Rebbe? And the mother got very quiet, and the mother said, wow, he is truly a godly man. Yeah, like, what's going on? And her mother said, well, we never told you, but actually, I'm Jewish, and therefore you're Jewish. And that's why the Rebbe asked for your mother's name, because Jews go according to the mother. And my Jewish name, you know me as Anna, my Jewish name is Chana, and that's the Jewish name you should tell the Rebbe for this Jewish woman yourself. She said, during the war, I was saved in a convent, and when the war was over and nobody came to get me, I just didn't want anything to do with being Jewish anymore. It felt like too dangerous. Too scary. Jews get killed. Jews' parents are taken away from their children. I didn't want to have anything to do with that. So met your father, and we live as good French Catholics, and that's how you were raised. But according to Jewish law, I'm a Jew and you're a Jew. He gave this over to Rabbi Weinberger. He understood why the Lubavitcher Rebbe wanted this non-Jewish woman's mother's name. Because it's not just a name. It's not just, okay, here's a name, a blessing. No, it's real. It's a reality. When the Rebbe sees that name, he's seeing the person, and the Rebbe is saying, this person's a Jew. This person, we need the mother's name. I personally had a very moving situation. This is with a woman I'm close to. So a woman I'm close to, she once called me, and she asked me, she said her friend in Russia, she's originally from Russia, she said a very, very, very close friend of hers in Russia just found out that she has like stage 4 cancer. Like, she wasn't feeling well, she went to the doctor, they did some tests, and boom, she already is like in stage 4 cancer. And her friend reached out to her, stage 4 cancer. She's supposed to have like an emergency operation in like a day or two, and whatever, looks really bad situation. So she asked me, could she pray for her? Could she do something? What could she do to help her friend? So I don't know why. I have no clue why. Something in my intuition, I said, can I ask you, is your friend Jewish or non-Jewish? She said, well, my friend's non-Jewish, but does it make a difference? Like, can't I still pray for her? I said, yes, of course you could still pray for her, but to tell you what to do, I need to know. I don't know why, but I was sort of sensing that your friend, I don't know why, I really don't know why, but God gave me the sense that your friend was not Jewish. So I said, if she's not Jewish, that's very interesting, because before the Rebbe's campaign, of course, as we were learning, how in the 80s, the Rebbe started this campaign to reach out to Noachides, to reach out and make people Noachides, to reach out and give people the message that they have a mission for God. So before that campaign, it would have been like in the 70s, someone had asked me this question, I probably would have said, pray for her. Yeah, of course you could always pray for her. But now, post the Rebbe having started this whole campaign of Noachides, I knew this woman herself had a strong ability to give to God and to serve God, and that's her potential merit. So I told her, I'm going to explain to you now the 7 laws for Noachides, for non-Jews, how they can serve God. And I explained each one of the laws to her, and she wrote it all down. Now, because I couldn't directly speak to her friend. Her friend is Russian and doesn't speak any English. So you're going to call your friend, explain to her these 7 laws. And she asked me some questions on them. And, obviously it's a thumbnail sketch, nothing like how you women know, but I really gave a solid explanation of the 7 laws. I said, give this all over to your friend and tell her she needs to do 2 things. She needs to accept upon herself that she will faithfully keep these 7 laws, serving God, connecting to God, and she will try to bring other people to serve God through the Noachide laws. And if she does these 2 things, this is her merit. This is the way she'll bring blessings to herself. Because I understood from, how the Rebbe has instructed that every human being, as a Noachide, has tremendous merit, tremendous power, tremendous ability serving God. Anyone that serves God is tremendously powerful. She said, okay. And she reached out to her friend, and she explained the laws. And her friend accepted upon herself to keep the laws, and she accepted upon herself to spread this knowledge to other people. And when she went for the surgery and they did some pre-op tests, they said, we don't know what happened before. You're not in stage 4 cancer. It's in like maybe stage 2. Maybe. And thank God she had a complete miraculous recovery. And I have to say, this woman once visited Chicago, and she obviously visited her close friend, and she brought her to my house that she could see me. It was very special, very moving when I met this woman. I couldn't talk to her, but it was very special and very moving when the 2 of us met. So I just saw so strongly, and again, before the Rebbe introduced the concept of the Noachide campaign, I would have probably said, you could pray for her, you could give charity for her. I wouldn't have understood the tremendous spiritual potential this woman herself has when she commits to serving God. And she did. And she created the miracles for herself. She did it, and she created the miracles, and she saved her life by committing to serve God as a Noachide. So I wanted to use this time today, whatever time is left, for you to talk about either your personal relationship or feelings, your connection to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, or to your questions on the Rebbe, as a central figure, as the leader of world Jewry. I think it's very important for Noachides to connect. I think it's very important for Noachides to understand that every one of us, every human being, has a personal relationship with the Rebbe. The Rebbe is aware, as these stories I brought out show. The Rebbe is aware of each person, aware of their mission, aware of their journey, aware of why they're in this world and what they're here for, aware of who they are. So at your personal relationship or your personal questions, now is the time. It's the 11th of the Jewish month of 11, the Jewish month of Shvat, the first complete official day of the Rebbe's leadership. So there's very, very strong energy now of the Rebbe's power of leadership. So I thought this is really a really auspicious time to talk about this. Anybody would like to start?
I will, because you sent me the one book to go over with all the writings that time when we first started, and so that gave us a lot of insight. And then, of course, we go to Rabbi Lebro's shul, so we connected through the Rebbe through Rabbi Lebro, and we whenever we had things go wrong, if the Rebbe or if Rabbi Lebro was going to New York, he would take our letters or whatever. And then Oren from Israel would take letters from us from here to there. So we do have a connection.
It's really special. Have you ever seen or felt like the Rebbe's response, like blessings or answers or things happen in your life after you sent in these letters?
Um, Honestly, I can't tell you. It's been a while. It's my literally my brain doesn't work well anymore, and I don't remember things, so I cannot tell you honestly.
Well, you did your part because you reached out. When you reach out, then for sure the Rebbe responds. So you're writing letters and reaching out is creating the vehicle for the Rebbe's response. And I'm sure if you did your part, the Rebbe surely did his. That's really beautiful. Anybody else? Anybody else would like to add?
How can we reach out to the Rebbe if we don't send a letter to the Ohel? Are we able to reach out to him in prayer?
So you'd have to be sort of careful about that because when you pray, you're praying to God.
Right.
So you're not, that's of course, the Rebbe is not, you're not turning to the Rebbe in prayer. You could turn to the Rebbe like not prayer, Meaning, like if you're literally saying a prayer is to God. But you could turn to the Rebbe in your thoughts. You could look at a picture of the Rebbe. The Rebbe says that when you look at a picture of a holy Jew, he's connecting to you through the picture. It's like a medium that you can connect. So
Okay.
you sense his energy through the picture and he senses yours, so to speak. And you could turn to him and you could ask him to help you.
Sure.
You
Talk to
like
him.
look and say, like, Rebbe, please help me with this situation. Please intercede for God on my behalf. You continue obviously to pray to God. You continue to say your psalms to God as prayers to God. But the job of the Rebbe is to be what Kabbalah calls the intermediary who connects. There could be an intermediary that separates between the two, like he's there in the middle, so there's you, there's God, and he's the barrier in between. And there's the intermediary who connects, that he's facilitating the relationship. He's transparent. He's not taking up space. He's facilitating the relationship between the human being and God, so they become one. So when you're turning to the Rebbe, yeah, I wouldn't turn to the Rebbe with the words of prayer. I wouldn't turn to the Rebbe with the words of psalm, but I would definitely turn to the Rebbe, like I'm saying, just look at a picture of the Rebbe.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a picture, you could go online. Lubavitcher Rebbe pictures will pop up, no question.
We have
You
pictures.
have pictures. You can look at the
Right.
picture and just ask the Rebbe to help you in whatever fashion you want.
Okay.
And that's, that works completely.
Okay.
There's writing in. If you have a question, if you want a specific answer, where you would write in and put it in a certain specific book or a certain type of book, or there's writing in and sending a letter to the Ohel. But
Mm-hmm.
definitely you could look at that picture and that should work just perfectly.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. Great question. Anyone else? Natalie, what about you?
I can't say particularly. I think for us, after, walking away from Christianity and JC, for us, it was like really trying to be mindful of not doing anything that would be considered creating your own religion or putting someone between you and God. I remember when we were in Israel, it was really a wonderful experience to go to the burial places. We went to where they say King David is buried. Some people say yes, some people say no. We went to where Solomon is.
By King David, when we were by King David, and I really feel bad actually, because this most recent time I went to Israel last May for my son's wedding, I wanted to go to King David tomb and it didn't work out. So I felt bad. We were in Jerusalem and I was like trying to get there and we had the time and it just didn't work out. Okay, that was the hand of God.
For us, it was like we're trying so hard not to cross the wrong lines. But it's like, on the one hand, we are so grateful and thankful to the whole Chabad community for everything that they've done in terms of supporting us, because we would just be even more isolated without it. But and I love watching the Chabad here has done at least one class about the Rebbe, and that was just really, really fun and really fascinating. But that's about all we've done, because I think it's kind of intimidating. It's like, we're not in any kind of dire straits. People don't have cancer or anything really on that level. And it's like, no, we can, and maybe that's from my grandparents, very much like pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of a mindset, that it's like, no, we're all right.
I totally hear you. And I
Like, we don't
totally
want to
hear
bother
what you're saying,
somebody.
coming from Christianity. I totally hear all that. I think it could be a challenge people coming out of Christianity could feel. And I think it's sort of like understanding Christianity took many beautiful, godly tenets of Judaism and warped them,
Right.
distorted them. And there's many, many, many examples.
Yes.
And the more you know Judaism and Christianity, the more you know the examples. And this is another example. There always is a leader of world Jewry. The word Rebbe is an acrostic for 3 Hebrew words. It's a 3-letter Hebrew word. For 3 Hebrew words of Rebbe are Rosh B'nai Yisrael, which spell out the first letter of each word, Rebbe. And Rosh B'nai Yisrael means the head of the Jewish people. We envision, our sages say, all the Jews are like one body. And a body needs a head. And this head is God's mouthpiece in this world. And as I was saying very clearly, a human being who is so transparent to God that he literally is a vehicle whose whole mission is to connect Jews and non-Jews. And we have, I mean, I just told you like two. I can tell you more and more and more stories of the Rebbe's embracing mankind, people all over the world, and trying to help them physically and help them in terms of connecting them to God. So it's a very clear discrimination that we don't believe in anything but one God. There's only one God. Anything else is idolatry. We don't believe in Shituf. We don't believe in anything else. There's only one God. God does not have form, does not have image. Yes, by the time of the redemption, we'll see him completely. We'll know then why and how. But as far as we understand, nothing physical to see. So there's one God, not visible to the eye, not physical. And that God selects at any given time one person who is his mouthpiece in this world, who both is conveying to us God's messages and who is helping us connect. So I could think, just as you're saying, you have a connection to the Chabad house, and they give you some type of community sense on some level, and they give you some learning, and so they help you in some way develop your relationship with God. So by virtue of the connection to the Chabad house, you know that the only reason the Lifshitzes are in this most isolated state in the whole America in terms of Jewish practice is because there's a Lubavitcher Rebbe who has a vision that every human being needs a way to have God in their life. And therefore he sends his followers all over the world. I remember speaking to Esther Miriam and her telling me how like she is in like the most isolated state from that perspective. But why is she there?
It's so funny. Yeah, they've been here like 20 years. And now, you know, and just had started out of their house with nothing. And now we have this incredible building, and it's got a mikvah, and it's like I don't know, it's like a $6 million facility and a big community. I think of like at least 400 people on the regular. And the, you know, and the community, like there's more Jews than that here. And certainly since October 7th, they've done a lot. The community has been a lot more connected, you know, even outside of Chabad too, in a lot of different ways. There's now like a Hebrew learning class that some of us have kind of started, and it's an interesting group because that's like Jews and Israelis and Messianics. So it's quite an interesting little smorgasbord.
Just think, why have this couple, young couple, who now has this huge family, why did they transplant themselves from the safe, sequestered, so easy to be a religious Jew environment and go to a desert from a religious perspective? Because they're followers of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, go out. Yes, you could sit comfortably in Brooklyn. Go out. There's people all over the world that need you. There's people all over the world that need God in their life. And by you going out, by them going out, they are vehicles for the Rebbe's energy to come to Natalie. You know, as we say, shliach, that's the term we use. A shliach means literally an emissary. And every emissary, as they are connected to their source, their principle, the energy of the principle flows through them to you. So as you have a connection to your Rabbi and Rebbetzin, you have a connection to the Rebbe. Because the reason your Rabbi and Rebbetzin are there, trust me, because of the Rebbe. And through them, the Rebbe's there as well. They bring the Rebbe wherever they go. They bring the Rebbe's energies wherever they go. By your very fact that you're benefiting from a Chabad house, you have a relationship with the Rebbe. But obviously, we can make that more by proactively turning, connecting, learning his teachings, thinking about his lessons, his vision, his trust in us, his belief in us, his drive to bring Mashiach now, and our privilege and responsibility to be part of that process. And just for each one of us to think like why do we have this class? Because the Rebbe has given the world, including myself, this vision of the significance of the Noachide, how the Noachide is so important to God, and therefore there's such a mandate to help the Noachide, to instruct the Noachide, to give Torah to the Noachide. And I'm so
Thank you
glad
so much.
all this, as I'm saying, this directly comes from the Rebbe's vision of the Noachide. I know you are important because I know how much the Rebbe holds every Noachide as so, so, so important. And I think, again, it goes back to Mashiach, because Noachide, they are really the world, and they're really, when the Noachide is serving God and recognizing God, this is the world accepting God. And the world accepting God, that creates the reality of Mashiach, the Messiah. So that could be why you're all so important, and the Rebbe views Noachides as so important, and therefore I, of course, view Noachides as important, and that's why I keep doing the class, because I know you're very
And we're very
important people.
thankful that
We
you do.
sure are. Yes.
Yes, we're very thankful.
Well, I'm thankful too, because I know how important Noachides are. How do I know how important Noachides are? Because that's what the Rebbe's taught us.